All right. Welcome to 603. This is case study 2. And we'll do our housekeeping before we get started. Thank you for joining me. This is Thursday, March the 5th. You should be working on your week 3 activities and discussion board, and we'll take a look at those in just a second. You should also be somewhere near task 2 of your OMA by this time. So let's look at our week 3 activities and discussion board. Let's see. How did that happen? Got kicked out of Blackboard. All right. Here we go. All right. Interview administrator concerning human resources practices, job openings, obtaining candidates, interviewing process, hiring process. Also inquire about services such as employee assistant, compensation plans, benefits. Determine how position openings, job announcement, obtaining candidates, interviewing is conducted in your district. So the idea here is every district does it differently. There's no one way for me to teach you how all this happens. So you need to find out, but the important thing is to find out how you go about finding out how it happens and the right people to ask, so that when you get your job and you're a part of this, you'll know who to ask, or if you change districts, you'll know where to go to find these things out. Different districts do it completely different. My only argument is the districts that put the onus on the school people to do the majority of this, those are that's very wasteful of administrators' time, in my opinion. It's very important to get good people, and so you need to spend the time and do your due diligence. The problem is when they expect you to find candidates, they expect you to vet them, call references, check resumes, and interview people, and then you send the person you want, and there's something, for some reason, they can't be hired. That's very frustrating. I worked in 2 small districts and 2 large districts in my career. The small districts, it was very frustrating. You usually didn't have as many openings, but sometimes it was harder to get people there, especially if it was a subject-specific discipline. It was hard to find people, and you went through a lot of time, and then you couldn't hire them anyway. The good thing about working in the large district, my last one was in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, the good thing there was when your analyst sent you somebody, they were employable. They'd already done everything that needed to be done. So you just got to pick between the people. I much prefer that system in terms of taking administrative time. It's a much better system than you having to get out and do all the legwork yourself as an administrator. Normally, you won't comment on compensation plans and pay and those things, but you need to know the right people to ask so that you can direct teachers to those people when they have issues or questions. You need to at least be supportive of that. On last week's week 2 activities, I read through all of those. They were universally good except for one. You know who you are. We have one that didn't go too well. Those places concern me for the safety of the students and the staff. When they don't want you to see the budget, they can't find the crisis plan. It's like it's a secret. Nobody knows where it is or what happens. They just filled it out because they had to. They don't practice, and they don't keep their building safe. Those kind of places worry me. If the administrator loses their job, they should. But I worry about the safety of the folks in the building.
Well, it's funny you said that, because we had an emergency staff meeting yesterday to find out that they got rid of the whole top tier of our school, and they're starting over next year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our superintendent showed up.
Yeah. And if you lose your job because of incompetence, indifference, that's on you. But one of the things that makes your hair fall out is if you're an administrator, you realize that the safety of the students and the staff is up to you in many ways. And that's a heavy burden, and you should take it seriously. My wife is, as I told you, is a curriculum instruction specialist, but she taught for a long time. And she did curriculum and continued to teach. Her last few years, she just did curriculum in the summertime, planning for new teachers coming in the fall in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. But she worked at the IB school in Davidson, so you can't give that job up. I mean, that was like your dream job. And but anyway, I supervised that principal, and and one of the things that I was hesitant about saying anything to that principal because I didn't want it to be that my wife's tattled on you, but they had I want to think during the 15 years that she was there, they had either 4 or 5 principals, and 4 of them were good. One of them was it was a good thing that breathing was an involuntary response, or she'd have smothered to death. She was so lazy. But she made the school. I mean, even a little place like that with only 240 of the best and brightest kids. I mean, those kids wore glasses so thick you could burn ants with them. I mean, they were like magnifying glasses. That's the smartest kids I've ever seen. But even in places like that, if you're lax, I mean, they weren't paying attention and the cafeteria caught on fire and they didn't even build it back. They just didn't keep the place up. Just nasty. Wasn't safe, didn't conduct any drills, didn't do anything. They felt like because we got the best and smartest kids, we don't have to do any of these things like regular schools do. And it worried me every day that my wife went to work there during that regime that something bad was going to happen. A shooter was going to wander in off the street. They didn't have air conditioning, so they'd prop all the doors open and windows to get airflow. No security of any kind. So you need to take that. You need to take your responsibility seriously, if not for your own career, but for the safety of the people that work there and the students that have put their faith and trust in you to keep them safe. All right. So next week we're going to shift gears. You'll go to exceptional children next week. I want you to pay a close attention when you talk to folks about the responsibilities of your intervention team. In the state lexicon or vernacular, your intervention team, your care team, SST, whatever you call it at your school, you're required to have one. But in the lexicon of state vernacular, that team is referred to as a school-based committee. That's very important for your purposes as a school-based administrator. That means if something goes wrong, it's on you. If something goes wrong in EC, there's all those layers of exceptional children, your compliance technician, your department chair. If something goes wrong with your head count, there's somebody else there, that the responsibility falls to. If something goes wrong with your intervention team, that's the principal. And usually the action is taken is to remove the principal if something goes wrong with that intervention team. In 2014, a week before school opened in August, 11 principals in CMS got dismissed or got retired, 11 at one time.
Wow.
Because they were improperly running their intervention teams. They were not putting kids through the 90-day process. They would get a referral to the intervention team, and they would go ahead and test the kid anyway before the interventions took place. And it was racially and gender identifiable who they were doing that to. There is no recovery from that. So the important thing to remember about the intervention team, MTSS, RTI, all those acronyms, is that's your baby as a school principal. There's nobody but you. And if you get it wrong, it's about your job. So you need to find out what's going on in your school. Again, if you get your assistant principalship in a different school, you'll need to find out how it's run in that school. But you need to find out what's happening in your district, what kids are promised and what they're getting. That's what we're looking for here, is what have we promised these students that are referred for academic or behavior difficulty? What process do we put them through? Is there more than just the 90-day required federal process we put them through? Do you have MTSS in your district, which can be up to another 90 days? And what parts of that do you have? Do you have RTI as one of your interventions, response to intervention? I mean, how does it work in your building? And you need to understand that your exceptional children's teacher will be on that committee, but only in an ex officio capacity, just for information. They will not be in charge. They hold no responsibility if it goes bad. So you need to understand that. So that's your activity for next week. Any questions about your activities? I'm glad that you're taking these and with the spirit that they're intended. This is a chance for you to partner with your principal or assistant principal and for them to see you in a different light, to ask some questions and learn some things. I was real pleased with the write-ups you've been doing, in terms of, it seems like that they've been very willing to share information with you, and hopefully they view you differently now. Questions you have for me before we get into our case for the evening? All right. So we have case study 2, and you were to do the work on Leandro. And so I had this pulled up a little bit earlier. I'll go back and pull it up again. Oh, I want the one from Duke. There it is. So the court held that neither school districts nor counties have any constitutional right to equal funding. That's what Leandro held. That's the bottom line. That's the context that you're to view tonight's case study under. Can't be any clearer than that. I hope you spent some time with Leandro. That's how we got the lottery. They said, no, we can't, we won't equalize funding, but we'll start a lottery and that'll fix all of our problems. More pork barrel money. The lottery has been a negative, just a regressive tax on poor people, and didn't help our schools in any way. It's also provided cover for our politicians to continue to take millions and hundreds of millions of dollars out of the state education budget and claim, well, we got all that lottery money, which never gets to education. It's just pork barrel for capital projects, which are pretty much all stolen. But this is the bottom line. This is from Duke Law School. This is the bottom line on the Leandro case. So in that context, I'm going to be interested to see what you learned about about the case tonight and what you learned in your research about Leandro. All right, who's going to be first?
Did all of my group make it on?
Yep.
Okay.
So,
I can figure out how to share. We can do this.
all right, I'm going to make you the host first.
Okay.
I'll make you the host. Now I will stop my video and stop my share. Stop my video. Now you should get a notice now. You should be able to click on share and share your screen. And it'll take a couple minutes. There it goes. Look at us.
There we go.
And I'm back.
I have to download download it or can I use it off?
You're good, just like that.
Okay, good. Awesome. Okay. So my group, although
Excuse me.
I'm trying to figure out. Okay. It's doing some weird things. Okay. So everybody had the same one this week. We talked about SBB, and it looked like that was one of 5 different budget types that were proposed in our books. Superintendent looked at rolling this out within his district. He did mention that this was something that's been proposed by a lot of larger districts lately that would be beneficial to the community, and that he would be sending out more information in the future. Okay, so the first thing we did was looked at what an SSB meant, the student-based budget system. From what we could tell, it took a certain dollar amount.
Okay, everybody, let's see.
Okay, so pros that we took away from that was that the money was going directly to the students. So certain taxpayers probably really love that. More bang for your buck. If you lived in that school district, you know that your students are getting the benefit of your tax dollars. Students' needs and everything was translated into a dollar amount. But the problem is not every school is the same. And the more we got into the literature, the more cons and concerns we did have, and the more confused we did get about some of the laws. So not every child is the same. And that's when we started talking about Leandra, when we looked at that. Had less children, did not have enough money for an equal education. So it looked like they came back eventually in the second suit with more, like 5 more counties, and said it's because their children cost more money to educate. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when we really got confused was when they started defining what a free public education is. So they defined it later on. Sorry, I'm looking for the right slide. And it was really minimal. At what free public education is, and it said that it was the state's role in providing that. So, sorry, I'm having trouble with my slide. And we use the same Duke law reference that you actually pulled up about what they defined as a sound basic education. So honestly, we really weren't sure if what that superintendent was doing could have been incorrect. Even though we don't agree with it, it seems like who in my group was talking about the different counties that are actually adopting this in North Carolina now. Like a whole bunch of counties are using this formula.
Let's get out of here. Ooh.
You're going to have to mute on that.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and mute.
Bottom line was my group was undecided. We said we couldn't prove that the plan was inappropriate. We didn't really agree with it, but we didn't understand some of the behind it. Like, why did they choose that other than other districts, like he said in the letter, had started to propose that. We felt there should have been more factors given to us about the why.
Yeah.
So,
We were doing a little bit of research on this, and I was looking up some of the other areas in the United States where they have this process in place. Cincinnati, Denver, Boston. And when they were talking about putting this process in, it was like it's a multi-year process. And some of these districts, it's taking 3+ years. And so when we read this case, it seems like they did the pilot just for 1 year, and then they were going to just automatically implement it the next year. And from what I read, the process takes a lot longer than just a year.
And then we kind of got hung up on the equal part because we pulled up the budget highlights from the state, and it allocates dollars for pretty much student-based funding. Different types of kids get different types of money, and so then we were confused as to what the superintendent's doing any different than what we're already doing, just more locally.
All right, so you have explored both sides of the argument. You looked at Leandro, and so what is your conclusion for a super? And we use Leandro because that's the landmark case for North Carolina funding, and we're working off North Carolina standards here. So what is the standard set by Leandro?
That it's not up to the county?
Right. The ruling was that it wasn't for county or state to determine equal funding for.
That's correct. That is correct. And so that other states are doing it, and that it is, I've studied district power equalizing formulas in funding since I was first in graduate school, and that would be when I was at Chapel Hill, and I was there in the mid 80s. So my personal experience with school funding goes back about 35 years, I guess. And there were models and textbooks even then about district power equalizing. And it is a thing. It is an accepted professional practice. It is a good practice. Except, what does the Leandro case say for North Carolina?
You do it.
A unanimous court stated that neither school districts nor counties, school district would be the school board, counties would be the county commissioners, have any constitutional right to equal funding. So in light of that in North Carolina, and you have to go by the state where you reside. Remember, education is not a federal right.
No.
Preamble to the Constitution allows that states may provide public education. Let me say that again. A free appropriate public education is not in the Constitution nor the Bill of Rights. It is provided for that states may provide public education in the preamble to the Constitution. So it's up to the state. And what has the state of North Carolina, the state Supreme Court in North Carolina, in a unanimous decision in the Leandro case, said what?
They have to provide a sound basic education.
And that's it. But neither districts nor counties have any constitutional right to equal funding.
Right.
So in light of that, is the superintendent's district power equalizing plan, where he gives different amounts according to the need. Would that be an appropriate thing to do in North Carolina?
Yes.
No.
No. These
About
are
taxpayer equity.
That's why I said we got confused with the word equal. Like, if you're talking like equal in math, then everybody gets the same amount of money. Whereas in this case, the kids are getting different allotments of money, and so each school's going to have different amounts of money.
Well, and I also think too with it, I don't mean to jump in, but I think about CMS being so large and disproportionate, and you can go from one spectrum to the next in terms of equity within the building. For the superintendent to say everyone would be equal, I don't even know if that would be physically possible. I think like Cornelius would break off, Valentine would break off. They would start their own pockets, which they're trying to do anyway.
Yeah.
We have such a diverse group, extremely poor to extremely wealthy in the district.
It comes down to, I know it's different in different states, but, you have one area's taxpayers would be paying for a different area's schooling, and I think that that's where a lot of the issue resides, is where is the funding coming from, and it is not stated. It doesn't follow the constitutional right. It goes beyond that.
And my group actually talked. I never really understood before I saw a new school opening and the people that clamored to move by the new school opening, and then got really bent out of shape about where lines are drawn.
Yeah.
They moved there for their children to go to this new school, and they were funding it.
Yeah.
Where their money was going. But I guess I never put it together. I assumed equal was equal money-wise.
Yeah.
That's like Union County. That recently happened to them, right? With the whole Waxhaw piece.
Yeah. Yeah. Property taxes go to fund capital schools. So let me try to explain this sentence that I've got highlighted. What the Leandro case was about was low wealth districts said, the state gives everybody $7,000 per pupil based on average daily membership. Places like Charlotte Mecklenburg add another $4,000 to that, so they spend $11,000 per pupil. And it's like this. Granville or we'll use Robinson, because they were one of the defendants. And so Robinson spends 7, Mecklenburg spends 11. We want the state to equalize that. We believe that we have a right to equal funding. Now, to do that, you got to give Charlotte Mecklenburg 5. They add their 4 to it, and they've got 9. You give us 9. You take the 2 you took from them, give to us, and now we both got 9. That's called district power equalizing. That's what they were asking for, is that the state get involved and equalize the differing amounts from poor districts to wealthy districts so they were the same. Now, that would help the poor districts, give them more money, but what would it do to the wealthy districts?
Take them off.
Flight. They would fly.
Down.
Yeah, and they would fly away.
They would have less. It's called district power equalizing. Unanimous. You'd never see a court unanimous. Unanimously said, oh, no, we can't do that. So now you think about this from the superintendent, what he was trying to do in the case study. He was allotting differing amounts of money to try to equalize the opportunity for all students, because it costs more to educate some students. He was trying to equalize what goes on. But what did the Leandro court say is there's no constitutional right to equal funding. So in his case, while his ethic of profession, care, justice, equity were all in place, what's going to happen if the wealthy parents in the district who say, wait a minute, my kids are going over here and you're only giving them this amount, so then you're giving them that amount to equalize what's going on. What's going to happen when the lawsuit comes? Does he have a legal leg to stand on in North Carolina? No. No. The purpose of this court case was to get you into funding and understand the ins and outs of school funding, average daily membership, where the money comes from, the Leandro case, those kinds of things, what a basic education is, those kind of things. But it also was to get you to understand it doesn't matter how good of the idea it is or what a wonderful thought it is. You have to follow the law first. And the law is pretty clear. If you tried this in North Carolina, even if your school board lets you try this, or even if your county commissioners let you try this, the first time you got a court case, you'd lose, because the precedent's been set in Leandro. And so what you have to learn here is we always look at the law first, just like last week. Before we got into Bobby's uncle and all the bells and whistles that we added to that case study to distract you, before we got into all of that, what's the first thing you have to do? Look at the law. In the Leandro case, before you let your heart get in the way, it's the right thing to do for these poor, disadvantaged kids. Before you we better go back and look at the law. The law in North Carolina says that there's no compulsion for for equal funding, so that in the end, those kids end up, because it costs more to educate them, they end up with more in the end. But that makes them the same? No. You can't do that. If somebody's got their calculator on them, what percent of 1.4 billion, 1.4 billion with a B, what percentage is $6 million? I think if you do that, you'll find it's just a little bit less than half of 1%. Is that correct? And so it's like 0.48% of 1%. Not very much, is it?
No.
A few years back, Charlotte Mecklenburg, in the wake before Leandro was decided. Leandro started in 98 and was 94 and wasn't decided until 98. And so about 96 or 7, it looked like Leandro was going to win. So Charlotte Mecklenburg got ahead of the curve. And they started the high school challenge in West Charlotte, Garinger, and West Meck. And they gave them an extra $6 million. Now, to put that in perspective, those 3 high schools got $6 million extra in a $1.4 billion budget, less than half of 1%. And what happened? People went crazy. They lost their mind. It became such a big deal. Republicans got elected and took over the county commission just to stop that $6 million. You'd have thought that was all the money there was in Charlotte.
But why was that? Was that because of the color of the majority of those kids?
All those kids, yes.
Yeah. All are black and brown.
That's correct. White people were just visitors.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you think years before, Garinger was all white.
Yep. Garinger was at one time Charlotte High School. And it was all white when it opened in 59.
Mm-hmm.
It was on the cover of National Geographic in 1959. Was a revolutionary school, had different buildings like a college campus. It was the most revolutionary high school in America. It was all white in 59. When I became principal at EDCI, when it was still a junior high school back in the day, there was a lot of when they were still the Trojans, there was a lot of that paraphernalia around. A lot of those old yearbooks, every kid there was white. But times change. Migration, they built 2 malls within 8 months of each other, one at South Park and one at Eastland Mall. One of them made it and one of them didn't. When downtown was revitalized, all those people that lived downtown were relocated to the east side, and that's what killed the east side. I remember going to Charlotte in 1983. She was my girlfriend, my now wife. I took her to Charlotte in 1983 to pick up a new car, and we rode through the downtown, and you rolled your windows up. It was so bad. Prostitutes walking the street, burned out buildings, falling down, just bums hanging around on every corner. They had to a lot of those flop houses. They had to relocate those people. They relocated them to the east side of town, and the rest is history. But $6 million, people lost their mind over $6 million. You'd have thought it was all the money in the world. And the Gang of Four were able to get control of the county commission, Republicans, for the first time ever, because people were so incensed that they gave $6 million to those schools. And it was a drop in the bucket. So that was Charlotte Mecklenburg's first attempt at power equalizing, give extra money in order to try to equalize the opportunity. It failed miserably.
So don't districts now, though, they have more innovative ways of doing that? Because what is Project Lift? What is the Beacon initiative?
But Project Lift is from private money.
Okay. Yep. Period. I got it.
Dr. Lamb, what is because now we have the equity superintendents. How does that work?
Well, they're just trying to provide the same opportunity. They're not talking about dollars. They're
Okay.
trying to provide the same opportunity.
Okay.
So there's a difference between equal funding and equal opportunity.
Mhm.
And so the equity superintendents are now trying to make sure that all kids have access and opportunity. But that, without
touching the money. Okay.
without touching the money. That's going to be quite a parlor trick, like pulling the tablecloth out from under the glasses.
Yeah.
Are school fees legal? Yes, school fees are legal.
Mm-hmm.
But if a child can't afford them, how does that work? Do you produce a document, like a McKinney-Vento document or something like that, and it gets waived?
Yeah, there's a department there's a department in all districts that pay that for them.
Yeah. Like the school my son goes to, all the sports are pay to play, but they've put it out there. There's some kind of extenuating circumstances or economic reason. You let the coach know, and the boosters, I guess, takes care of it.
Yeah.
And I get that from a sports aspect, but the ability to attend a school.
Like technology fees or lab fees.
Yeah, PE clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's one of the problems I have with charter schools. Charter schools, I have one of my former students, she's an executive. She opened one recently, and I'm not against charter schools per se. I'm against anything that's a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's another attempt at segregation. Charter schools, the majority of them are not about who's there and what you're doing. They're about who's not there and ways to exclude people. And one of the ways that they do that is with their fees as well. But public schools in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, if there's a fee for a required activity in school, there's an office there. There's a department that takes care of that. There's a waiver system. If you're McKinney-Vento, which I guess you all know that's homeless.
Right.
And so the fees won't preclude your child from getting the basic education now. They may preclude your child from being able to participate in sports or other activities, but they won't preclude your child. And usually there's some scholarship money through the athletic departments at schools that help with those as well. Mm-hmm. But in some charter school situations, their fees are such that you can't attend the school. That's one of the ways that they do that. And of course, private schools do that with their tuition.
Oh yeah.
So that's nothing new. And then there's, my story about private school is Davidson Day. Very good friend of mine and next door neighbor. He and a very good friend of his started coaching football at Davidson Day right after it opened a few years back. And they had scholarship money for students. Of course, they had to be good ball players to get that scholarship money. Mm-hmm. But they found a way. If they wanted a kid, they found a way to, when that school opened, the tuition was $17,000 a year when it opened. And that was how many years ago? 10, 12, 15 years ago? I'm sure it's more than that now. But when they would identify a kid who was an all-star player, like the kid that's now at Wake Forest and the Greer kid that played at Florida and now at West Virginia, they had all those all-stars come through. They found a way through their athletic department to pay for them to come.
Sandra Bullock movie. There was a movie made about the football player that went to
The Blind Side.
Yeah.
And they made it sound it was all wonderful. But yeah, these, if he looked like Tarzan and played like Jane, trust me, he wouldn't have been to private school. And so if your kid's good enough, we'll find a way for him to play ball wherever he is. Now, but the problem is the kid that wants to be in the chess club or band or something where there's requirements that access. But the state is just worried about a basic education. But there are ways for children if some places will do scholarships or grants or whatever. But yes, fees, you can charge fees. Mm-hmm. there's a limit to those and what they can be. That's set by your board. But yes, fees are legal.
Yeah.
And so the thing to remember about this case is don't get caught up in all these terms and definitions before you get to them, so that you can make your argument when parents come and want to, storm the castle and drag you out and beat the stuffing out of you. Before that happens, you got to look and see, first off, what did the court case hold? And I told you what the relevant case was, Leandro, and they held that they didn't have any right to equal funding. So that meant that you can't be adjusting the dollars. Everybody gets the same. And so that means that in North Carolina, if somebody challenges this in court, the superintendent will lose. I know it's a little confusing, the terminology here, but we don't have district power equalizing in North Carolina. We still give the same amount to every child across the board, regardless of what district they're in. The local can add to that, and so we don't have don't have any right to an equal funding basis where we adjust the amount of money so that kids get equal. That's what the superintendent was trying to do here. He wasn't trying to give anybody any extra. He was trying to vary the money so that they ended up equal. That's what he was trying to do. Not allowable in North Carolina at this time. Now, we're hoping later this month or next there's going to be a continued finding from Leandro that might address that through the appeals process, but we'll see. But that's where we are. Good job.
I have a question before we go on.
Mm-hmm.
Where it says providing the sound basic education, then it goes through the 4 points was sufficient.
Right.
How do you measure that?
State test.
Okay.
Well, it's a poor measure, but that's what it is. I'll agree.
Okay.
Because I tell my students all the time, if you're one of those people that that don't believe in standardized tests, that doesn't adequately measure what a child knows, get out now.
Mm-hmm.
This business is not for you. If the score didn't matter, we wouldn't have a report card, and parents got to have something to go to the country club and brag about.
Right.
You got to have somebody to beat. We all know that it's unconscionable to do comparative accountability, compare kids from one economic circumstance to another, but we do it all the time. It's awful. We should be looking at growth accountability. How did we grow this kid 1 year every year? Did we do that? But no, we got to do comparative accountability so that we beat somebody. And one of the things that I'm seeing more and more of, and we'll get to in one of the later case studies this semester, is that it's not the parents of the poor people that storm the Bastille and try to cut your head off. Mm-hmm. It's the rich parents wanting more, wanting you to take something from the others. The very people who would complain in this situation would be the wealthiest kids, like at Ballantyne. You mentioned that. Finest, you mentioned that. So, those would be the parents they're the ones now that are mad. Yeah,
and they're petitioning to leave the district. Yeah. So is Cornelius up there at Huff High School.
Cornelius, I know. I'm one of them. So,
Matthews.
These people, they're not for their fellow man. Trust me.
Yeah.
We want what we want, and we want you to take from them. I told you the story. My first assistant principalship after I got through my internship was at a middle school, and I had a parent come in, and he was mad because the district had given them a teacher, for a gifted teacher, had given them one, the county was paying for a gifted teacher for 13 kids all day long. And he came in and said, we want her to get a teacher assistant. You're out of your mind. You on dope? A teacher assistant? Well, the EC kids, they have assistants. I said that the teacher and the assistant paid for by federal money. Well, if we can't have one, at least take theirs away from them. like those poor EC kids were going to catch up to their kids, like it was some kind of a real competition. Like, get out of here. He was the same nitwit that came back later in the year, wanting to know why his daughter wasn't getting any playing time on the basketball team. She was 4 foot nothing, and she was small, but she was slow. Couldn't play dead. And they had her on the team because she was a fine little girl. But we had some horses on that team that could play, 6-footers and over. And won't know why she could play. Said, she's got a great set shot. I said, so did Bob Cousy. But that was 50 years ago. My point is, people think because they have money that overrules everything else, like talent or rights or any of those kinds of things. And your job a lot of time is to make sure that they understand that public school is for those kids. It's not for your kid. You got money, go to private school. We'd love for you to go. I'll give you directions. I'll help you carry some stuff if it's not too heavy. But public school was for people who couldn't afford a private education. Let's not forget who our people are and what our core competency is. You know, if my neighbors in Cornelius want to secede, most of them go to private or charters already. If they want to secede, more power to you. You know that, but we can't lose sight of what our role is as public educators. We had private schools in this country before we had a constitution. Let me say that again. We had private schools in this country before we had a constitution. Yeah. We didn't start public schools because there weren't schools around. We started public school for the great unwashed, for folks who couldn't afford to go to private school. Somehow we've forgotten that over the years. And we need to get back to remembering who we are and what we're doing and why we do it. But you're going to get a lot of you're going to get a lot of complaints from parents if they want more for theirs and less for others. And so, as you'll see when we get to the EC case study later on, it's the non-EC parents that are complaining, not the EC parents that are complaining about inclusion. We don't want them kids in the room with our kid. For 25, 30 years, school administrators have dealt with complaining parents almost daily, but it was always the parents of the exceptional children who came in and complained that their kid wasn't getting what the law said they were supposed to get. In the last 2 or 3 years, 4 or 5 specifically, majority of the complaints walking in the door now are from the regular ed parents complaining because the EC kids are in their room and slowing their child down. It's completely flipped. And so now it's not the poor parents that are storming the schools demanding that you do more for their children. It's the wealthy parents demanding that you not do that you don't equalize things. The world has changed. You got to keep up. All right, who's next?
I'll go.
All right, let me go to participants. Okay, I got to reclaim the host. All right. More, make the host. You are now the host. I'll stop my share. Turn off my video, and yours ought to come on now. All right.
Okay. So we quoted the case finding. The unanimous court stated that neither school nor the counties have the constitutional right. And what kept jumping out at me is no exception, no excuses. Right there. So we said the superintendent seemed to be operating off a line item budgeting, an approach in which the school organization will be based its budget off a previous year's need. As was mentioned in the letter, SBB allocated dollars directly to the school based on the number of students enrolled and the specific needs of the student. The current situation, we talked a lot about Title I funds available to schools, which allow them access to regular school.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How come we get extra funds if you said we couldn't have any extra funds? Title I comes from what source?
It comes from federal dollars. So
Federal.
yeah. So that
what were we talking about in this case and the Leandro case and our case study speaks to
the state.
There you go.
And
What?
so-
And in the hierarchy, which trumps which? Does federal trump state or state trump federal?
Federal.
There you go.
Federal.
Yeah.
So Title I is outside of the scope of what we're talking about because it's
Right.
federal.
Right. So so we were saying that's how some schools have that quote unquote equity is because the federal dollars are in, but not from the superintendent.
And not from the state. That's correct.
Right. So we looked at the our equity versus equality, and so equity funding would be an upgrade to entire educational program. Must focus on students who are at risk and failing, meets the standard. Employ instructional programs to meet the need and provide professional development. Equality is the consistency across the board in terms of funding. And so every school gets the same amount of money.
Let's stop there for just a minute, and hopefully I'll bring some clarity to this.
Okay.
Go back one slide. Every school gets the same amount of money. You say, but Dale, that's equal funding. Nope. No, it's not. Because some kids cost more to educate, but dollars don't go as far. So the same amount of money at Ballantyne doesn't go the same amount as it does on Statesville Road. And so what happens is this. So if every school in the district gets the same amount of money, because it costs a lot more to educate disadvantaged kids, it doesn't go. So in the end, this is what it looks like. And that's what they were telling, that's what the Leandro case was talking about. We don't have the money to put extra in. Give us some of theirs to make it equal. On the district level, because of the variation in schools, it costs more to educate here than it does there. Let's change the balance of dollars. Let's give the kids on Statesville Road more and the kids in Ballantyne less, so that we'll be equal. The effect will be equal because it costs more to educate the lower end kid.
Right.
That's the whole notion here. So when you start talking about equal funding doesn't mean we get the same. It means in the end we end up the same in the end. So that's the tricky part of this case.
So we went back to looking at slide 2. The basic sound education includes the fundamentals of reading, writing, history. We talked about all that. So then we talked about the superintendent's decision is unlawful.
That is correct.
The superintendent's actions seem to be capricious. The decision he is making is unlawful in his personal capacity. He's using his authority to make unlawful decisions, which is not in accordance with the actual law that is there. And then we started with our paradigms. So we looked at justice. Even though he's trying to provide justice, is not appropriate because of the Leandro case and the decision that the superintendent is making. He does not have the power to do this.
He does not. That is correct.
Again, he's caring for his students, but that is not his decision.
That's correct.
He oversteps his authority, and though he was trying to make it equitable instead of equal, he doesn't seem to have the corrupted morals. So he doesn't seem to have corrupted morals, but he's still got to follow the law either way.
He's the ethics of his profession. He's got to follow the law.
Yeah. And
So
again, even within his profession, he still has to stay
right here, considering the potential moral legal consequences in decision making.
Yeah.
That's the ethics of his profession is where he fell down.
Yeah.
He's ignoring the law. Did you see of course, you probably don't have a legal news feed on your phone like I have. I wonder why my wife calls me a nerd. And so there's a superintendent that's had to resign because she forgot the ethic of profession because she was doing the ethic of caring. She put one of her kids in elementary school on her own insurance.
Yeah. So
Got caught.
Sure. I didn't think they fired her.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that was. I didn't.
Nobody can give you permission to break the law. That's a felony.
That's a felony. Yeah, she was arrested for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, she was arrested, but I thought they said that they would support her. And I was surprised when I read that in the news. I was like, okay.
Nobody can give you permission to break the law. And when they tell you we'll support you, that's the same as the check's in the mail and I'll still respect you in the morning. It means just as much. It's the same thing. And when you break the law, you're out. She did the ethic of caring, but she forgot the ethic of profession. Nobody can give you permission to break the law. It's not excusable. So this case, thank you, Shannon, what a wonderful job. This is about the ethic of profession. Y'all hit the nail exactly on the head.
All right.
Exactly on the head. This is about the ethic of profession. You can't break the law, even if it's for the right reason. Even if you're using your powers for good instead of evil. No, it can't do that. And that's hard. One of the things that happens, principals a little bit, superintendents a lot, you get enamored with the power in the end of your finger. You can point and things happen, but you still can't break the law. You still cannot break the law. So, excellent, excellent, excellent. If you had a better instructor, y'all would really be doing well in this course. All right, who's next? Who is next? All right, participants. I'm going to reclaim the host, and let's see our last presentation of the evening. We're staying on time. We're an hour in, and we got 2 down. They said if I didn't stay on time, y'all pull my hair out the next time you saw me. All right, who's going to be next? Last of the night. Give me a name. Step right up.
Okay, we can be next.
All right.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Nope.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Yeah, I can, but I can't see you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so you want to see my screen. Here we are.
All right, so there you are. Now I can see you. All right, I got it. So I'm going to make you the host now, if I can. There you are. I'm going to make you the host. Yes, I'm going to stop my share.
Okay, so
I've got to reclaim the host and then do share. Okay, I'm going to do that. And then, all right, so I got to get back to me and then get to you. All right, I'm back to me. Now I'm going to go to you. Come on. There you are. I'm now going to make you the host. I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to turn off my video, and it should pop up for you now.
okay.
There we go.
So we also did case 2, letter to the community, and we referenced several different resources in line with what we've heard already today with regards to North Carolina's view on the Leandro case. We talked about the history of it. We've already mentioned that it was from 1994, and the 5 rural districts mentioned were Hoke, Halifax.
All right. You got to share your screen.
Oh, I'm going to get it together.
Share button.
Here we go. Share. And I'll go right here. Okay.
Yay, there we go.
Perfect. Okay, so we're on this slide. Much has already been talked about the case in particular. We also talked about, we found resources that showed that the case started in 1994, and the districts and mentioned the 5 rural districts that started this whole process were Hoax, Halifax, Robeson, Vance, and Cumberland. And it ended up, like we had already discussed, the premise was a well-trained, competent classroom that had a certified classroom teacher, certified principal, and provided resources to every child, giving them equal opportunity to learn and to grow. Our next slide. I'm sorry, I got so much stuff hovering. We talked about how the process went on in 2004. The state Supreme Court argued that the Constitution was a violation of providing a sound basic education for all students, and that the burden was on the defendants to prove that this issue had been fixed. It culminated in, most recently, this was in the Observer, I believe, in 2018. In 2018, there was a lawyer who argued that the state's education system is way different now than it was then, and that the state board had taken the necessary steps to guarantee students had the opportunity to receive sound basic education. And we've already discussed what sound means, which in this case is sufficient.
Do you reckon her pants was on fire when she told that?
Yes. Yes, I reckon.
There's going to be another ruling on Leandro, as I said, coming out soon. This is an attempt to get out in front of it, and so that if it doesn't turn out like the state wants, that this is going to be the grounds for an appeal. There is again advance word that the original decision will be vacated, and that they will say that the state needs to start taking active steps to equalize the opportunity for kids in rich and poor districts. And so now that what has happened is, since the current political party that's in the General Assembly that has a supermajority, they've cut out over $1 billion. The inequities have really risen up to now. And so these people, again, this is the AG's office saying, oh, we've taken steps to fix this. It's not about steps, it's about money. When you've cut $1 billion out of the state budget over the last 7 or 8 years, the inequities are really even worse now than when Leandro was started in '94, because of taxes and real estate, and now all corporate America, or corporate North Carolina, doesn't pay taxes now, and that's every dollar that they get in tax relief is a dollar taken away from schools, by the way. And so the inequities are larger than they've ever been. And there's a good chance that the revisit to Leandro is not going to come out like the ruling party in the General Assembly wants. So this is propaganda in preparation for that decision. And it's a warning shot over the bow, is that we're going to appeal the decision if you reverse Leandro.
Mm. So our next slide is going to be picked up by Sharonda, I believe. She provided, we were discussing how we were going to lay our case out. She went straight to her phone and she found the Duke Law piece that you referenced yourself, that says the Supreme Court ruled that the state of North Carolina, not local districts, has the ultimate constitutional obligation to actively safeguard and successfully deliver every child's Leandro right. Once again, no exceptions and no excuses.
So going off of what Finance was saying, after last week's discussion about switching our perspective from teacher to administrator, it really made me think about the law. And when it said no exceptions and no excuses, this plan is just because that's what was asked of us, even though we know that the law that he cannot do it. He couldn't have the pilot group, nor could he put out that plan. But the pros of it would be the individual needs of students are addressed on the parental input, the transparency of the budget, even though budgets should always be public record, and then the accountability for spending. Some of the cons that's already been discussed as well would be who will determine how the needs will be funded at each level. It doesn't include all students, the transfers, magnet students, unidentified students. You could end up seeing a increase in identified students to try to bring in more funding. And will the transparent budget cause tension? And like I said, we talked about that as well. It will probably have neighborhoods and different groups of people going back and forth over something that in this case is not lawful, but as we said, it will be addressed one day. But as of today in North Carolina, it cannot be done if you want to keep your job.
That's right. If you want to keep your job, you can't do that. And the people that would be most angry and vocal against it are the people that have the means to actually sue you.
Right.
Yeah.
So now with respects to the paradigms,
the first paradigm we looked at was justice. The decision by the superintendent is arbitrary and capricious. The determination of student-based budgeting rests with the state, and of course the state has already decided unanimously that the districts cannot do that. So the superintendent cannot take state funds and then reallocate them for a student-based budgeting plan. And then care. He was exercising care because he wanted to provide attention and support to schools that didn't receive equitable funding based on their local funds and the lack of taxes, which was referenced in Leandro. However, the reallocations of funds is out of his jurisdiction.
That is correct.
Okay, according to the paradigms, the critique one is about asking difficult questions, raising inequities within society, and looking for possible alternatives to the status quo. So we know that the superintendent would be breaking the law, but anyway, he is trying to find where the money is following the kids. So that could be one part that is part of the ethic of a critic. And the other is he's trying to challenge the way things have been done or the status quo by, like, for example, looking for parental engagement and looking for transparency in the budget in a different way. And for the profession, he's trying to look for the best interest of the students, and he tries to address equity, diversity, and social justice by reflecting the principles of transparency and ethical behavior, and of course, reflective practice. But again, he is not allowed to make those changes.
and our resources.
Excellent.
Nice and sweet.
What's the difference between an evangelist and a missionary?
An evangelist is there to promote religion, and a missionary is there to live by the religious example. That was a guess.
Anybody else?
An evangelist.
All right, I'll make it easy for you. An evangelist takes the word to people who want it. A missionary takes word to people that don't want it, often at great personal peril, have ended up in a pot of boiling water. this superintendent has the best intentions, but it won't help if he ends up losing his job over this. He needs to understand the difference between being a missionary and an evangelist. In his role of trying to change the money to end up equal in the end, he's playing the role of a missionary. People don't want that. People don't want to hear, the wealthy people don't want to hear that. The more well-to-do parents, they don't want to hear that their child, something's been taken from their child to give to somebody else's. They're not going to hear that. And it's against the law to boot. Oh, you don't have to worry about losing his job. They're going to boil him in a pot. You know, you're only an evangelist if people want to hear it. And it does no good to be a martyr or a missionary and lose your life over your job. You can't have any impact. It doesn't do any good to lose your career over something that you believe in, because you can no longer have any kind of an impact. And so while I applaud his ethic of justice and caring, the ethic of profession always takes over. I mean, the law is always the law, and it doesn't do any good. I mean, it's just a symbol to lose your job over something like this, because then you can't have any impact for those kids' lives. You'd be much better off to do something to try to work within the boundaries of the law to try to help those kids, than to do something like this that steps outside the bounds of what's legal. You lose your job, you're not helping anybody, especially your own family. That's kind of what this is all about. Is whatever the law is, we have to follow it. Nobody can give you permission to break it. Last week's case, principal should have known that teacher had a crazy grading system, or she had developed one right quick, but that her action was just because she didn't like Bobby or didn't like Bobby's family. But the proactive thing to do in the case last week was to check everybody's syllabus and make sure that their grading system was correct and by county policy.
Right.
Hers wasn't. So that kind of fell back to the principal, since grading is your responsibility. This week's case about is following the law, making sure even though it's not the popular thing to do and the right thing to do to try to help these kids, the ethic of profession comes first. Nobody can give you permission to break the law. It's just that simple. I guess the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But that's kind of where you're headed in this case. This one is a loser. This one, there's no wiggle room in this one. It's not like it was a 5-4 decision, and then when it gets revisited, you got a chance to win. This one's unanimous. No wiggle room on this one, and that's why I like this one. It gives you an opportunity to understand funding and the big picture, but it gives you the big picture kinds of things that you're going to need to know to be a principal. Why we do what we do. And understand the ethic of profession. We follow the law every time, not just when it suits us or when it's convenient. We follow the law every time. Questions you have for me? Is it fun? Is it bearable? Is it just hateful and spiteful to have to do these case studies?
I feel like I should take a whole class in school law.
You should take a whole class?
In school law.
It's more fun than you can stand, I can tell you right now. Do you find that the collaboration with your peers did y'all do a lot of collaborating on Zoom in your EDCI program? Did you come online like this and do your presentations, or do you find that this helps you any? Is there any value in this for you folks? I know there is for master's students, but for you folks who are postdocs, is there any value in learning to do this and being host and sharing presentation? This is kind of, this collaboration is kind of the wave of the future, even in education. I've been doing this now for about a year. I really like it. I think students get something out of it to learn to collaborate virtually and do virtual presentations. I enjoy it. Y'all probably don't. But.
Well, I know I dropped the ball in sharing my screen just now, but yesterday I led a meeting with a representative out of California, and I was the only one in my physical meeting that had Zoom downloaded, that had accessed Zoom before, that knew how to navigate it. And so I did feel like I was able to bring extra to the table.
Yeah.
I mean, I have it on my phone, I have it on my laptop.
Yep.
No one else had it. But the California company drove us to it. They told us you need to use Zoom.
Yeah.
So I was a great representative, and I appreciate that.
Good. Good. I'm not fishing for compliments. I always try to get feedback, reflection.
I like Zoom.
I like that. And of course, I like for you to write the reflection. You know, what's good, what's bad. You get something out of collaborating with your peers, or they're all a bunch of knuckleheads, and I feel dumber for having to been with them for 5 hours. I mean, whatever you think, that's what makes me happy. I just like feedback. I just like to know, because I'm a planner and a schemer. I'm always figuring out something to do next. All right. That's enough for one night. We got through. You tell Dr. Laws we were through 12 minutes early tonight. He didn't believe me when I told him last week. He swore that we had a pact that y'all just lied for me. All right. I'll see you next week. Got any questions, give me a shout. Bye-bye.
Bye.